Wagner Reed, and I am so happy to be here and meet so many of you. I think I've met a couple of you before at some other Mass Challenge events, but first of all, I want to say congratulations on making it into this incredible program, because it's kind of dreamy what opportunities lie with this, and I'm just thrilled to, I'm also involved with Mass Challenge. My company does the PR for Mass Challenge Texas, so I'm here today to talk about PR for startups, and I'm sure there's a lot of different levels in this room of people who have either done it in the past or don't know nothing about it. So we can do a little 101, or we can also go pretty deep depending on where you all are at. So as mentioned, my name is Heather Wagner Reed. My company is called Juice Consulting. Up here, let's see, oh, that was my computer. My company has been around for about 10 years in this form as an agency. We're a boutique agency. We do a lot of we do local, regional, and national PR campaigns, but we're based here in Austin. We have some offices in Houston and Dallas. I actually work with a lot of different types of companies, ranging from social impact, nonprofits, startups, small businesses, accelerators. We have a lot of accelerator clients. My background is actually in the entertainment business. Little tiny fact about how I got to Texas was I have a big, long history in the entertainment business. Prior to moving into this realm, and I came to Texas to work with a pretty famous, iconic global performer named Beyonce Knowles and her family. And that was kind of my soiree into how I got into Houston and that market. That was 15 years ago. Did that for 5 years. I worked on her global marketing and just general management and coordination. But my background is in PR. I've been doing PR for about 25 years total. I studied it in college. I majored in it. I actually got a degree in journalism at the University of Georgia. And journalism is actually the fundamental background to what PR is, because you have to learn to think like a journalist and to go into the minds of somebody who's going to actually be covering, you from an earned media standpoint. So I also spent a lot of time abroad. I lived in the Netherlands for 5 years and did PR and marketing for a number of different companies. Also worked with a startup over there, and was, at the time, it was, 2002, kind of at this time where there was a lot of, dot-coms launching, and I got involved with one in the Netherlands that was also in the music industry, was handed $1 million marketing budget at the age of like 25. It was pretty exciting. And I got to spend that, and I got to hire, I got to hire a really big agency based out of Brussels, Saatchi and Saatchi, and I was just an opportunity of a lifetime. So I have a huge warm heart towards the startup community. I've experienced it, and now with my company, we want to do all we can to support that realm as well. So I wanted to just quickly show you a little bit about what types of services we offer, so you kind of have a background on it. A lot of startups and companies in general, when evaluating when they want to do PR, if they want to do PR, basically have to question what kind of help are they going to get. Are they going to hire someone to do it internally, bring in an expert? Are they going to bootstrap it and do it themselves? Is there a super limited budget where the CEO needs to be doing PR as well? Or do you want to hire an outside agency? And what you'll find is that nowadays, outside agencies are doing a lot more to integrate their services. In fact, my company just did this last year. I used to be mostly just PR and marketing and some product management services. But last year, I actually decided to double up on our service offering and bring in some more expertise. So we do a lot more than that now. Now we're doing social media and graphic design and web development. Media sponsorships have always been under our umbrella. We even do video production and music production now, and events. So doing all of that has made it possible for us to keep the services internally that a lot of our clients need. So you'll find that, I used to subcontract a lot of these things, and now we can offer it as a full agency. That's an interesting thing and a timely thing, because that's a big shift that's happening. PR is definitely part of a bigger marketing umbrella. It's one element of a much bigger picture. And when you can integrate the services and integrate a lot of the aspects of a campaign, even with the same agency, you can save yourself some money, some time, and you can really hone in on your expertise. So that's something to consider, if you ever do decide to hire an outside agency for your company. But back to bootstrapping, I'm kind of curious what, well, real quick before we go on, I just want to show you some of our clients. These are a variety of the ones we work with in Austin. Ironically, Black Fred is one of your cohort members. They're a social impact music nonprofit here in town. We've been working with them for about 5 years. We work with Impact Hub. They do a lot of accelerators and co-working space. Of course, Mass Challenge is one of our dear clients we've been working with for the last 6 months. We work with some venture capitalists. We work with musicians. We work with some documentary films, nonprofits, you name it, a lot of different brands. My big thing is trying to work with brands that are beloved Austin brands. If we're gonna do something out of Austin, Texas, I want it to be something that's on the cutting edge, that's really exciting coming from this town. That's kind of the crux of our client base, but a lot of times, we'll have national clients as well. People hire us, especially during South by Southwest. I have tech companies, music companies coming to hire us because of our local expertise. So, for example, we've been working with the French government for the last 8 years on all the French music activations, all the French tech activations, and that's been a lot of fun. So, just a couple, just to give you a background there. So anyway, back to, hold on a second here. Yeah. So yeah, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, which was a lot of fun. So who has done PR before? In any capacity? What have you been, I'm just curious to get an idea. What did you do that for?
I actually do it for myself, and we've been able to get national, local news, and TV recognition by me doing it.
Okay.
And writing press releases, and being able to network with interviewers, like people like that are actually on the news, and producers, and getting able to have those special connections for radios too.
And now, are you serving in the function of a marketing person, or are you more the CEO? Or
I'm the CEO of the company, but to start off to bootstrap, because I started with like under $500, I had to start doing that myself. So that's how I picked up the skill set.
It happens a lot, and it's actually not a bad skill set to have, because even if you end up handing it off to someone else eventually, knowing how to do it is always going to be helpful, especially if you're the spokesperson, because then you can understand the science of it a little bit more. What did you raise your hand too?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of like handling little stuff, like we've won business plan competitions, so putting that in the press and trying to reach out to different people to write about the things that we've done, and had some luck with some and not so much with others, but not to the extent of like working for a PR agency, but just more things we've done for ourselves.
Right, cool. Anybody else? Yes?
I'm a former business journalist, and I've also done a lot of PR in the nonprofit space as a part of my job, former job, and then most recently I've done a little bit for a social cause. My friend's daughter has a rare form of brain cancer, so kind of helping to raise money for that through local media.
Nice. Cool.
And then I do a lot for my company too, a little bit.
Well, it's a really fun industry to be involved with and a fun role to have, because it is very integrative in the community. It does put you out there. You're kind of the person with your ear to the ground on what's going on. To do PR is definitely an art and a science, in my opinion. And really, in its truest definition, what it is the ability to get earned media through the means of communicating. So earned media, meaning a third party writing a story or talking about you. It doesn't necessarily always have to be editorial. It could be a buzz in the community. It could be a general knowledge within the community about your message. And it's interesting because when you're launching a company and you want to put together an overall marketing plan, there's different elements to that plan. You've got potentially you've got your advertising, you've got your social media. Definitely PR is right up there, hand in hand with advertising. A lot of times PR is the very first thing people do because it's usually the least expensive. When you're investing in PR, you're usually investing in the work that's being done, not necessarily a tangible thing. When you're investing in advertising, you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a print ad or a television ad or an online campaign. So PR is generally also a little bit less expensive. Now, they can get more expensive when you start doing events and you label those as PR things, but I've seen a lot of times marketing campaigns that label events under the marketing budget generally. So people come to us and they're like, what's your monthly retainer? How much do you cost? I'm like, trust me, what you'll be paying me per month is what you'll be paying for one full-page ad in that magazine, more than likely. So it's never a guarantee, though. PR is also like ambiguous. I can tell you, don't ever trust a PR person that guarantees you anything because it's very hard to guarantee editorial coverage, you know. My job is to make sure that I know how to do it, that I get the job, that I get the message out for you in a way that's, you know, going to be effective for you and gets to the right journalist and in the best possible way, and that I can come back to you and say, here's what they've said. They're gonna take the story and run with it, or you know, they're not interested, but I'm going to this person. There's tactics involved, like offering an exclusive on a story. If you give someone the opportunity to write before anyone else, they love it. So that's a little trick where you say, okay, I really want a big splash. We're making an announcement, you know, we're going public. Who do I want to break that story? What's my dream publication? You know, think up your dream and go for it, because there's nothing stopping you to pursue that. But when you offer someone an exclusive on it, chances are you're going to get more coverage. And then you put your press release out the next, you know, that afternoon or the next day. So basically, you know, I think with a lot of the methodology that's involved in PR, like every day, my staff and I are thinking through the strategies of how do we get that coverage for our client. And it's no one client is alike and no one day is the same. You know, it's very different. So the longer you're doing this, the more you've experienced like the different ways to go about it. I'm going to get into a lot of different things about, you know, how to do PR, but I will say this, it's like an interesting decision as to when to start a PR function. My feeling is it's never too early to start, because it's a building process. It takes a long time to get relationships in the press and in the media. It can take months and years to forge those relationships. So even if you're not 100% ready to go public with a big press announcement, you can still start doing PR by simply making those connections happen. Letting people know that, you know, that you exist, that you're an expert, that you're a voice in the community that could speak on a certain topic. And even if you're 6 months away from announcing some major news about your company, you can still start doing that to prepare for that announcement. A lot of times clients come to us and they say, well, what's the lead time we need to do this? And I always say 6 months if you can, because I remember from every single corporate job I've ever had in my whole career, that was kind of the lead time to do a proper marketing campaign, to do, you know, when we were releasing records in the Beyonce days, it was always a 6-month lead time. And what you do during that lead time is you get your assets together, you get your messaging together, you get your content together, you get your website updated, your publicity photos done, and then you look at, you know, little, what I would say, bursts of reason to go out to the media. And this is just a comparison, you know, just something to look at. But when you release a record, you look at, I have a single coming out on this date, I have a video coming out on this date, I have another single on this date, now we're going to be in stores, now the record's released. Every single milestone is a press opportunity. Every single milestone. So, you know, same thing with a company that's preparing for a launch. You may not be able to say you've launched or that your website is live, but you could have other milestones between now and then within that 6-month lead time. So I do get clients, though, who say, hey, we've got this coming up next month. What do we do? And I'm like, look, we can do it. We will knock this out. We have to be super aggressive. A month is not a lot of time. But if you'd have come to me 6 months ago, we would have gotten a lot more for you. Another thing is, you know, magazines, when they cover you editorially, they were always working 3 to 4 months out. So essentially, a magazine, you know, like, let's just say Texas Monthly, they're already working on their, what's now, you know, like probably their August issue is going to be my guess. Maybe even September. Like, they're going to be way far out. So you got to think about that when you have an announcement. Now, you can put something together messaging-wise under embargo, which is like, we have a big announcement. We're not ready to talk about it yet, but we want you to start working on a story. It's under embargo, meaning you cannot publish this. But if you honor our embargo, from now until this date, you can have access to all of our interviews. You can have our information. We'll open up our chest to you and give you whatever you need. And then when you're ready to hit go, that story's going. And it's the best way to get really good in-depth stories is to have an embargo and then push before it's actually public. So, any questions so far? Because I'm happy to take questions along the way or kind of keep going. Let's see. Oh, okay, this is a cool little list I put together. So what does PR involve? Common responsibilities of a PR function would be like designing communications campaigns, writing news releases, press releases, and other content for news, working with the press and managing press relations, arranging interviews for company spokespeople, writing speeches for company leaders, you yourself acting as a spokesperson, so if you're the PR person, you may go on record a lot, preparing clients for press conferences, media interviews and speeches, writing website and social media content, crisis management, which is, something goes terribly wrong, what are we going to do, what are we going to say? Never say off the record if you can avoid it. I've got some media training tips I'm going to throw at you too, but nothing is ever off the record, just an FYI. Anything you ever say to a media person can be reported. Doesn't matter if you ask them. It's ethically possibly not the right thing, but I've even experienced it myself. I was quoted probably in my early 20s in the Wall Street Journal Europe because I thought I was giving a journalist background information for my boss to be interviewed, and they actually took my quotes, and I thought I was explicit. I'm just giving you the background. So just know from my own experience, just always keep that in the back of your mind. Because being quoted in the Wall Street Journal is cool, except I wasn't supposed to be doing the interview. So for me, I was a little bit taken aback by it. Managing internal communications, so you have internal, if you're working for a big company, there could be a huge designated effort to just manage communications within the company versus external communications. And then marketing activities like brand awareness and event management, that can also fall under PR. Another really important exercise when you're actually preparing to do PR is thinking about who your stakeholders are, who is your demographic, who's your target audience. So that goes into, to me, that's defining two different groups. One is, who are your stakeholders in the press? Who are the people you want to pitch the story to? Who do you want to be writing about you? And who are the people in the public that you want to be reading and hearing about you? Is it consumers? Are you more focused on B2B? Are you interested in, people reading business journals? Are you interested in only your trade? Trade media would define media that's specific to your industry. So there's a ton of media in the tech industry, for example, and that would be part of a PR campaign targeting tech. But a lot of times you're looking at various target outlets. So, I worked on a campaign. I'll show you some examples along the way too. This might be a good time to mention this one. There was a campaign I helped launch for a startup a couple years ago, and basically it was both a B2B, B2C, and tech story. Company was based on a capital factory, and Larry, you know this one. This is just an example of a press release we put out. At the time, I was working for my company, but I was working also on behalf of Embark Veterinary, and what we were announcing was this revolutionary DNA test that was like nothing else on the market. And what was so interesting about this was when we put this press release out, it was right before South by, and all the tech media were coming into town. So we did it on purpose. We did it under embargo, I remember that, to let people know about it, and then we announced at South by. And one of the things that happened was we ended up getting, this was a very compelling story because this DNA test was much more advanced than anything that was on the market. And it was also in collaboration with Cornell University, which doesn't hurt a campaign. So what was interesting is we had a couple things going on. We had the announcement of the test. We had an event to make this timely. These guys were speaking at South by, so that was a reason they could come and get their interviews at South by. And then we were also basically just announcing the product and the company. And what ended up happening was we put this out there for tech media, but we also wanted to get media that were writing about genetics. We were wanting to get media that were covering, pet news, canine news, science media, bloggers who were, there's just so many outlets you could get. Consumers, the people buying this test. We wanted people to go out and buy this test. And this ended up getting so much attention. We got the Today Show to cover it. Things blew up. And in a way, it got crazy. And we had so much business, we had to slow down on the PR. Because it just got like, as a company, a startup, you got to ask yourself, are we ready to welcome the masses? When these orders start coming in, can we accommodate and facilitate? So it was a really successful launch, but that's a really important question. When do I start PR? If I have a product, what if I do get on the Today Show? What's that going to mean? Can I generate enough? Can I keep up with demand? those are questions you need to ask before you go wide with something like this. Because it's certainly newsworthy when you have something that's different, that has not been, you know, when you have in this case, a test that's, you know, bar none, much more significant than the others in the marketplace. So that was just one example. Let's see here. There's been a lot of different interesting little nuanced stories I wanted to share about when people decide to do PR, but this one is, Black Fret is one of your, like I said, they're in Mass Challenge as well, and they hired us about 5 years ago, just at the point where they're trying to get to 100 members. So they're a nonprofit that raises money and gives grants to Austin musicians. They've already raised $500,000, and they've given it out in grant money. When they first started, for every member they get, they raise more money, and it creates more of a wealth of money to draw on to give back out. And in a way, this is kind of like an accelerator for musicians, if you ask me, because they also get mentoring and a lot of other good benefits. But they were like having a PR, I guess, challenge where they said, you know, we want to get to 100 members by this date, but we're afraid to go and talk about ourselves until we get to 100 members. And I'm like, well, you got a problem. I said, here's what I think. I said, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Make your 100 member goal the PR campaign. You know, you're going to take a little risk. What if you don't make your 100 members? But I guarantee you, if you start putting some energy behind this and some public messaging out there about this, more than likely they will come. So let's come up with an idea of how to get to 100 members by a certain date. Make a huge splash and make a deadline. And let's see what happens. And that's what we did. And we ended up pulling in some really cool spokespeople. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ben Queller, but he's a pretty cool artist who's actually living in Austin. So, you know, we're like bells and whistles. Who can we pull into this that's going to bring some attention? We got Ben Queller to headline a big event for a member drive event and lunch event. We ended up talking to the media about the member drive, explaining what Black Fret's mission was, and the media went crazy because Black Fret was facilitating a need in this community. You know, artists are making musicians are making an average of $15,000 a year here. And that's a crisis. You know, that's a crisis. They can't afford to live here anymore. So Black Fret is filling a need, and that need was so perfectly aligned with, you know, where the city was at the time that the media went crazy. So we had, I don't remember exactly, but I feel like we had 40-something media come out to the first event we did that night. We got to 100 members well before the event. It was perfect. It worked out. But in that respect, sometimes it's smart to go ahead and go public because it might be the fire that you need to ignite something, you know? So there's a lot of strategies in how to go about this. I often tell, you know, our clients, think about a news angle. You can't just start doing PR necessarily publicly without something significant to talk about. So if you don't have it, then how can we create it? What do we do to come up with a news angle? And you know, certain things that really get news are launches, you know, raising a significant amount of money, giving back, that's news. Charitable partnerships, that's really new. That's something the media like. You know, there's things that aren't quite as newsworthy that you see people talking about, but it doesn't get very far in the media. Like, we have a new website, we've made a new hire, you know, things like that. I mean, they're newsworthy for you, and yeah, maybe you'll get a story here and there, but it's not going to be the big one. It's not going to be the thing. So working on, you know, thinking through it from a strategic standpoint, what is the most significant thing we can announce? Try to think about it 6 months out. What is the most significant thing we can announce in 6 months? And then work backwards with a timeline. What can we put out between now and then that are, you know, bits of news, announcing this thing in 6 months, and you just chip away at it. You get yourself, your PR person, your agency to be pitching constantly to these media. You get your messaging out there. And in a 6 month period, you really are going to have a more effective campaign if you have something worthy to talk about, you know. So that's one of my you know, I tell my clients that all the time. But if you don't have that much time and you only have 1 month, you can still do PR. You're just looking at more, like, the coverage you're going to get is definitely more shortly. So bloggers, maybe radio, television, maybe your daily paper, you know. Magazines, they would cover it after the fact. So, and And then the other thing that can happen sometimes too is, media, it's really effective if a media person tweets about you or says something about you on social media. So that's another really great, effective, short-term way to get press. And lately, a lot of our clients have been coming to us and asking us for what's called an influencer campaign. And that's where you actually target people that have huge amount of followers on social media, like, Instagram followers, etc. And that's been a shift in our business. It's like no longer are we just pitching to, traditional editorial. It's like now we're pitching to influencers. You have 35,000 Instagram followers, you're valuable to us, So it's funny, they work a little differently than journalists, though. They like to be schmoozed. The influencers, it's a funny thing. They like to come in, they like to get wined and dined. Influencers are different, but I have to say it's now like looking at the whole picture. What can we do overall to get eyeballs on this thing, whatever this thing is, Okay. Oh, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the benefits of PR as well. It's definitely a very valuable thing. I will tell you, having that third-party endorsement where an article is written about you, it's amazing. For the first time ever in the 10 years I've had this company, I did PR for us last year because we had our 10-year anniversary. And it was so incredible to see myself firsthand. I'm a believer. I've done this for other people for a long time, but I've never really seen how it could affect my business. And we did a number of things to bring some attention to the company. We got a lot of articles. We did a huge party. Let's just say that the city of Austin gave us a proclamation on our anniversary date from the mayor. Somebody just called me up and go, "You're getting a proclamation." We called a few people. We put it on the radar, but they did it. Thank God. They were so happy to do it. But what it does for you guys as far as startups, I think it's like it really is a great thing to do to build not only credibility, but to get your name out there. I know that with venture capital and people looking to invest, when they Google you and your name pops up in some articles, whether it's about your startup or it's you on record as an expert in your industry, that just brings a lot of interest and credibility. Some of the other things I wrote down here, right. So it can do increasing visibility, raising brand identity in the community, raising employee and investor morale. Your employees definitely love it too. In fact, one thing is really great is now that we have social media, you're no longer in a vacuum. So anytime something comes out, you can just post it on social and spread the word there, and people see it. In fact, sometimes it's been an interesting shift because we used to be so concerned about getting things in print. I want that article in the magazine, or I want it here, I want it there, because I want people to read it. Well, everything's digital now. So even if you get an article online, no one is going to know the difference between whether that was in print or not. They're never going to know. It's still written about you, and it's still written by that magazine. So there's a huge amount of value in a digital story as well. In fact, potentially more. Sometimes the print articles don't always come across as the same way on their websites of the outlet. So sometimes a real hardcore online piece is much more effective for spreading through social. Supporting fundraising efforts, multiplying customer and user base acquisition, supporting other marketing channels, and again, PR can attract venture capital. I think one of the things that I found to be interesting, and that I learned even just preparing for this talk, was that I understand that like your VC support could actually recommend to you in many cases a PR route. You can go to them for advice if they're working in a certain area of expertise. They may say, here's who you should talk to for PR. We've worked with them before, or this is an agency that specializes in this, and give you that kind of advice and mentorship. And I thought that was an interesting thing to bring up. I don't know how many of you are dealing with anything like that, but from our perspective, we do get referrals from a lot of other clients in the business that we've done. And so at a certain point, you start operating in a certain space, and you become an expert in certain things, So I'm lucky because my friend Larry back here is very much operating in the startup and entrepreneurship and accelerator space, and we chat all the time about how much I want to do so much more in that area, and it's been a wonderful thing for me to have that kind of input, So something to keep in mind is, ask around. If you're thinking about doing this, you should get referrals for sure. I cannot tell you how much I have dealt with other agency partners or other consultants for clients that I work with who are either hit or miss. Some of them come in and they are killer on a project, and they deliver, they do it for a great price, you know, and they go overboard, and you know, they're just part of the team. And others, you know, it's like anything, you know, sometimes it's just, you're just not getting what you want out of that relationship, or they're just not doing the job you thought they would. It's the same thing when hiring a PR person. In my opinion, referrals and people's former experience is what really speaks to what they can do. And you have got to know that you have to manage your agency as closely as you would manage a staff member. Never ever assume that because you're hiring somebody, you can just let them go, let them run the campaign and not check in, not breathe down their back. You know, you have to manage. I am a firm believer that in order to do a really successful campaign, you have to be on top of them as much as you would if you were dealing with a staff member. So this is another really interesting thing, is like having someone on your team who understands marketing and communications. That's the person who should be managing an agency. They are responsible for getting the most out of the agency. It's really helpful to have the experience and the knowledge of what to expect. So people in that field generally do. Now, if you're bootstrapping and you are the one doing your PR, you don't have to worry about that. If you're the one that's hiring the agency, then you know it's just a simple amount of research. What should I be expecting? Ask other insiders. People come to me and go, what should I be expecting out of my agency? I'll be the first one to say, you need to be doing this, 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 and this. They need to be doing this and this, this. And if they're not, get on that, you know? And I just know that because, again, like sometimes we'll collaborate with other companies and I'm just like, wow, it's amazing what's out there, you know? So something to think about. How many of you guys, I'm just kind of curious, but how many of you actually feel like you're kind of close to wanting to go public with what you're doing? Great. That's cool, you know? So it's a very exciting time. One of the very first exercises that I share with clients before you even, you know, go down the PR realm is, what are your key messages? Because like there's some basic tools in PR that are, you have to kind of do it before you want to start putting yourself out there. Basic tools would be your key messages, 3 to 5 messages that you know inside and out, your staff knows inside and out, your anyone who would be a spokesperson especially knows inside and out, but you're all singing the same song about what your message is. These are little blurbs, you know, 3 to maybe 1 to 3 sentences each that talk about what you want to convey. And every time you do an interview with a press outlet, you focus on those key messages. Now, these can change, but this is where you're at right now. You're getting ready to do a press interview. The way to prepare is think about your messages. Then, when you go sit with a journalist and they start asking you, you know, all kinds of questions, first of all, you're clear on what you want to say, but second of all, sometimes the interview goes over here. You want it to go here. There's a thing called bridging. When this is what, you know, we do a lot of media training. There's something called bridging where you actually, journalists going here, you're here, you want to get back to your key messages. Well, you can bridge them back to your key messages. One of the things that I often tell people in our media training is you should be in control of the interview, not the journalist. No offense to any journalist, but at the end of the day, you're the one with the information. So when you go in there and you have a certain objective in a story, you're like, I know Wall Street Journal's interviewing me and I really wanted to go down this direction. You know, really prepare for this. This is not a thing to take lightly. Research who you're talking to. Do the research. You have to know what kind of style writer they are. You have to know what they're writing about, what their interests are, and go in there fully ready to have that conversation. Know what you want to say. Know what you want to come across. Define your messages. Make sure that you know, there's some things you can do while you're having an interview. Let's say you get asked a question you're not prepared to answer. Well, unless it's a live interview, you can actually say to a journalist, I actually am going to get back to you on that. What is your deadline? And I will get back to you on that question. You don't have to answer it right away. They may say, well, my deadline's in an hour. Great, I'll get back to you in an hour. Give yourself time to think about it, because sometimes these things can really make or break sometimes. You know, you got a big interview and it doesn't go quite the way you want, and you say something that's not exactly what you wanted to say, you can't take it back once it's in print. You just can't. So there's tactics, and I'd highly recommend that anyone speaking to the press is media trained. That is really important, at least once, because it helps you define those messages. It helps you understand some of these little ways to handle interviews. The most stressful, in my opinion, is television, live television, because that's like you're on camera, you know, lots of stuff going on, and there's who knows how many, you know, millions of viewers, hundreds of thousands of viewers. One thing I found is that things that might make you nervous, you know, like local TV, those things are generally really easy. Those are generally more community focused. Hey, we heard you have a new business. Tell us all about it. You know, but you know, you've got some major news coming in from, you know, New York and LA for South by Southwest, and you get some interviews lined up. Those are things you have to look at the gravity of them. You're on CNN. That's your shot. That's your money shot right there. You know, so you're going to have one chance to do a killer interview. Prepare. That's all you need to do is prepare, and be ready for potential questions. You know, thinking through things in advance, and also what your messages are. And you know, you can't really say I'll get back to you in a live TV interview. But again, media training will teach you all that. You'll know exactly what to expect for all those scenarios. Phoners are great. Phoners are really great because when someone is on the phone with you, you can actually keep your notes in front of you. You know, you can take a little bit more time to respond. That's something that's very common too, because people are busy. They can't always get together in person. So, you know, a lot of times journalists will tape the interview so they can understand their notes. And very few times you can actually ask a journalist to show you the story before it's published. It's a little atypical with some of the, you know, bigger publications, but like smaller publications usually don't mind. They like to fact check, and that's nice. It makes you feel better. You're like, oh, I know what's coming out. I can actually prepare myself. I've fact-checked many stories, and there's always something, usually. So that's a good thing to do if you can do it. But again, those are types of things you learn through a media training session, because there are certainly, you know, I'd say best practices in all of this. And you definitely don't want to make any assumptions, you know, when it comes to these writers.
Yeah. Where do you get media training?
Well, if you have a PR agency, they usually have a media training function. Most agencies do that. If you hire a PR consultant, often they do it. You can hire a media training specialist. You could just Google media training Austin and see who does it here. I'd say there's lots of options for it. Probably wouldn't cost you more than, you know, $5 to $1,000. I don't know what people cost these days, but I can tell you, like, you're looking at a couple hours with a really great expert in a room. You know, so there are people out there that do it. We do it all the time. You know, we usually just do it as part of our retainer with our clients if they need it. So, okay, let's see. I was going to say that, you know, going back to something I was reading, just especially when it pertains to startups is one major problem with the hold off for now approach with PR, and I said this earlier, is it takes many months to properly cultivate these relationships. So, you know, if you're trying to build a relationship or relationships with media that pertain to your message, you know, what you're trying to get out, taking them to lunch, you know, having your marketing and communications person take them to lunch to get to know them is a perfectly great way to start a PR venture. Now, realize they might want to do an interview, they might want to know something, and that's fine. You know, you may not be ready to put a full press release out for a few more months, but start honing that relationship. The other thing that you could do easily before you go public with your company is position yourself as an industry expert that people call about a specific topic. So let's say you could be quoted in other articles from, you know, now till the cows come home. You could always be an industry expert on something. So have your, you know, part of your PR function is how to position you, like, you know, in the community for those opportunities, and also nationally. One time I had the New York Times called, and here's what I did, which is kind of funny, but they called and asked me if I wanted to go on record about an issue within the Austin music industry. And I thought, God, I want to, but in my mind I'm thinking, but this would be so great for my client. They're the ones who need to do it. So I did that. I said, you know, I'm happy to talk to you, but I really need you to talk to these guys because they're doing this thing. And they did, and so my client got in the New York Times, and they were thrilled. So there's, you know, you can be tapped for all kinds of stuff that would help get that earned media. So let's see. So I was talking about the tools. Some of the tools that we use a lot are, besides developing your key messages, would be bios, company bios. So it's always good to have your bio and anyone that else would be considered a spokesperson available to the media so they know your background. Getting an updated bio is like one of the very first things we do with a lot of our clients. PR photos, recent headshots, something that's a little more captivating, something that's current, that's very important. Having an updated website, clearly, that's always a question as to, is our website ready to go public? Because if you're going to start putting things out there, people are going to your website. That's the first thing that they're going to do. So you need to make sure you're really ready for that traffic. Social media handles, grab those hashtags as fast as you can and get your pages so that people can find you on social media. It's actually funny. I was with a client recently that had an opening, and we weren't doing social media for them. We're just doing straight PR, media relations. We got to the event, and one of the journalists is like, "What's the handle?" And I was like, "Simon, what's your handle?" He's like, "Oh, I didn't set it up yet." And I'm like, "Oh, crap." She was about to tweet from this thing, and so basically we lost that opportunity. So bottom line, have that stuff ready, because that media are all over social media. They are all over Twitter. They are all over that space. So for them, it's a really important thing. Your press release, usually a press release will be announcing something, some major news. For me, writing a press release is like the most quintessential part of my job. Whether somebody reads it or not is not even the point, because we do a lot of our pitching from what the press release says. We don't always go, "Here's a press release, what do you think?" No, we put a heartfelt pitch together, and we ask the media to consider a story based on our pitch, attached as the press release. But for me as a publicist, I think about the act of writing a press release is the way I understand my client the most. I interview the client, I get the facts, I get the who, what, when, where, why, I understand the messaging, I get the quotes, I get to the heart and soul of what we're trying to say by the activity of writing a press release. For me, it's like kind of a selfish, I'm like, let's write a press release because I need to know all this to pitch you. And it's great because the clients often don't even understand what they're trying to say. A lot of times people are like, I don't really know exactly. It's like, well, that exercise helps everybody define it. And then once that content is written, you can use it again and again and again. You can use your boilerplate for a future press release. You can use some of the messaging on your website. You can pull parts out of it for social media. Those quotes that are in the press release, the media will use them in their stories. It's like free information. So it's a really, really important tool. I know a lot of people say, well, press releases are kind of like, they're not really important anymore, but I still use them. I benefit from them. I know our clients do because the facts are on the page, but it's more, again, it's like this interesting exercise that I love to use. But again, in all honesty, I was in school, learned PR 25 years ago, so I don't even know. Nowadays, kids are coming out of school, they're doing things differently. It's all about the digital space now. But the good thing is I've hired a lot of young people, so we kind of work in tandem, like, well, you do your thing, I do my thing, we're going to make this all happen. And it works, it does work. Defining your target media lists, that's not really a tool, but it's something that, you want to think about who wants to write about this. And generally, there's a lot of kinds of media that could write about you as a startup. They could focus on a business story. They could talk about, depending on whatever industry you're in, there could be a writer specific to that. If you're doing a big event, you talk to the event writer. If it's a very consumer-based story, you can go to a features editor. There's many people at different publications that could be interested in your story. So, like, for example, the Austin American Statesman, we usually pitch to 3-4 people there for different angles on the story. New nonprofit writer, social impact, there's people doing innovation stories, there's tech writers, tons of tech writers in town, business writers, so we try to figure out an angle for each one, and then usually it's one that gets back to us and says, I'm going to do this. And then somehow, most people know internally, like, okay, so-and-so is doing the story. And then your spokespeople, generally most companies have 1 to 3 spokespeople that they would offer up to put out there for these things and be the ones being interviewed. So defining who those people are, who's going to be going on record, and making sure they are media trained. That's just a super important thing. Okay, I don't know what time it is. Let me check. Or does anybody have the time?
It's 1.
Okay. So, wow, yes, I did it. Okay. I can talk. I am going to open up for questions, though. I just want to show you one or two more things. This was the press release that we did when we announced the Match Challenge coming to Texas, Match Challenge Texas, and this was basically about the public launch, which is, again, a news angle. There's a big event happening. We're inviting the public. We're inviting the media. That's a really good reason to go out to the press, is an event, especially a public event. When you do a private event, not so much, because there's no reason. The media can come to the private event. They might do some post coverage, but they're not going to talk about it in advance, because if people aren't invited from the public, not so easy. I actually encourage our clients a lot to create a public angle to the event. Even, and if they don't, it just limits a little bit of the coverage opportunity. So this was cool because we had the mayors coming in from both Austin and San Antonio. Obviously, a lot of really big names in the tech industry. And lots of great speakers. And it was really kind of this release was pretty long too. Normally press releases are about 2 pages, but we just had a lot to say about Match Challenge Texas. And I'm looking here, looking for something. Yeah, so Larry, he's right there. He was quoted in this press release. So basically, that's just another example of something that we put out. And then when we announced the cohort, we did this one, and this was actually announcing you guys, all the companies that were selected for the accelerator, and kind of the demographic and the breakdown. We're thinking about what would the story be on this, and it was really interesting to see the international companies coming in, where else in the country people are coming from, how many female founders there were. That's a huge number. That was really exciting. So those are all news angles. There's that. And we just did a PR campaign for this social impact company, Care to Rock, which was really fun. And these things are like a good example of how to integrate a public angle on an event. She was like, "Oh, we're doing this private event, but I want you to make a big deal about it in the media." I'm like, "Well, how media? They're not going to cover it if it's just totally private. Like, you can invite them; they will cover it afterwards, and we can talk about other things. We can talk about the launch of your website and talk about this and that as part of the story." I said, "But we need a public angle." So what we did was we put this in here. Care to Rock is offering an invite along with a free month of music lessons, blah, 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 to a limited number of customers who respond to this invitation. We just put this one paragraph in there, and that blew it wide open for pre-coverage for media. Made it a lot easier for us to garner attention. Now, they would have covered it either way, but this gave us a little bit of an extra reason for them to cover it. Now there's a reason because my community can come, So we got a lot more coverage just by adding that one little thing. So there's a lot of different tactics that you can use. And then here's your boilerplate and your bio. So this is, boilerplate would be this one little paragraph about the organization. Very important to get this right and to make it very strong. And then the bio. This is our main spokesperson and the founder. Her bio wasn't very long. It was a short bio. I mean, usually your long bios are for the websites and for other things. Here we just want to show a little bit about her background and who she is. Press contacts at the bottom. So that's just another example. So yeah. So I know I talked about a lot. I don't know if I've skipped anything important. Do you guys have anything you want to? Yes.
Have you ever had a company come talk to you and you say that, you know what, I don't think we'll be able to help you?
Yes.
And what were the reasons for that?
But they weren't ready to go public. Like, I've had it happen where website looked crappy. They didn't have a compelling story yet. And in our case, we like to feel like we're advocates for the client. So if for something's coming along and I'm like, it's not really a fit for us, then we wouldn't do it. But I do, in those cases, I would coach people. I would probably work more as a consultant to them versus a PR representative and help behind the scenes to get them ready to go public.
Is there certain products that you would say, you know what, no one wants to write about this? But it's still, it might be a good company, but it's not newsworthy.
in my head, yes, for sure. Absolutely. Those are, it's funny because, how do I say this? I think sometimes I get approached by companies that don't really fit into our wheelhouse, and we're not experts. But there are other people that may be better suited for them, that have another area that they focus in. I recently got called by a roofing company. And they're like, we have this announcement we need to go out this week. We heard you're a really great agency. I'm like, well, we've never done anything like that. I don't know that we're really a fit. And I have no idea who covers that type of news. So,
because like the concern from a startup's perspective with PR is that, well, it might work, it might not, and we still kind of have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Whereas with paid advertisement online, we can kind of see a return pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we can kind of turn it off if it's not working here. It's like there's a sense of trust. You have to trust and be like, well, okay, here's 6 months, 3 months of pay for something that might or might not work. So for us, or at least for me, that's the concerning part about PR. I don't know, do you have any advice on how we should?
I think I do. I think you should start with like a short-term agreement with anyone you engage with to see how it works. Because like I said, sometimes people are, sometimes these outside agencies are hit or miss, and it's got to be a fit. So I would say start with a 3-month contract and don't commit longer until you're completely sure of how that works. You're going to have to take the risk to do PR because there's never a guarantee with PR. The only guarantee you have is that, that they've done good work in the past and that people speak highly of them and they've got a great client base. Sometimes the PR agent has to throw things against the wall until it sticks. Like, there have been challenges I've come across with clients I thought for sure we're going to get coverage, and I'm like, God damn, what's going on here? But I'm relentless, and I will not stop. In fact, what I do is if they've retained us for 3 months and I'm not getting the results I want, I will work another 3 months for no cost till we get it. Like, that's just how I am. And generally then it works because I got my full 6 months, but I'm just really concerned with results. And I feel the same way. Like, I recently hired an outside consultant to work for us because I don't want to be doing my own PR necessarily. So same thing. But I manage that person, and I'm looking every 30 days. What did you do? What did you do? And I'm not gonna be like, well, just get back to me after a while and tell me. It's like, no, I need to know. In fact, I want to know what happened last week. We give reports to people every 2 weeks, progress reports, so they can see what we're doing with every outlet, who we're talking to, what they've said, anything that's come out so far, who we're pitching. I like our clients to feel informed. And that's the kind of agency you need. You need somebody that's very thorough, very, very, very open with, the work they're doing.
Okay.
Yes?
If we're trying to do our own PR, just for budget purposes until we're ready to hire somebody else, how do you find the contact information for the people? If you do the research to figure out this one's going to cover the female founder angle, this one will cover our environmental angle, this one, how do you get a hold of them?
Yeah, so basically it's similar to what we do. There are databases for this, but they're pretty expensive. So what we like to do is just old-fashioned research. We go to a specific market and really analyze what publications are in that market. It's a lot of Googling. You can do some research like, print magazines Houston, print magazines Austin, dailies, Austin Daily Paper, Austin radio stations, Austin TV stations, tech bloggers in Austin. You can Google it to find out and put a list together, and generally their information is on there. You want to shoot for the editor. Always the editor is a good one, and then there's usually writers who are like specific to certain beats. So you have, a business writer or a business editor, you have a fashion writer, you have a this, you have a that. Those are other people, secondary targets. And television, it's like you want to pitch the assignments desk, but there's also sometimes producers you can pitch directly. A lot of it's available on their websites. So usually if you just scour the website, you can find the contact people.
So follow up on that. I did pitch a TV station and a magazine who both loved the pitch but passed me on to sales to pay for the PR.
That happens.
How do you avoid that?
It's hard. Television.
Because we would hire a PR person to give us the official stuff if we're going to have to pay for the opportunity anyways.
I
right?
know. We've had that happen with some of our TV pitches. I see it more when TV is great covering nonprofit angles, charity angles, events. But when they see that there's a company that would generally have a budget to advertise, they often do that. So what you got to think about is another way to approach them and think about, okay, maybe I can't come on and talk about my story as a commercial business that easily, but what if I end up doing something in the community that's giving back, that will get me the interview, that will allow me to talk about my story? So, you know, PR people are always strategizing about other angles that you can do to create a bigger reason for people to be interested. You know, I'd say maybe 30% of the pitches we do for TV get the same results. And at some point, you know, I try different things. At some point I go back to the client like, guys, okay, look, here's what we've done. Tried this, we tried this, we tried this. They keep coming back to this. Do you want to advertise?
Yeah.
I mean, at a certain point, there's no other option, and sometimes they do. There's we actually do help some clients manage their advertising budgets, so it's actually not a crisis, but it is certainly a challenge
I
at
just think it
times.
doesn't even look as good though, because like this particular station, it makes it very clear that this is a sponsored story. So then, I think you lose the credibility there when you do that. But, because it's clear, I mean, to me, sponsored posts on Facebook aren't, I skip over those the same.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Well, television may not be the focus right now, but it's certainly like I said, if you start really, really thinking through the possibilities. Like, I'll give you an example. We had a hair salon that was a client, and so we do luxury goods sometimes, and this is a high luxury salon. And at first they did the same thing. They said, well, no, we're not interested, you know. But after a bit, we came back to them with a few ideas, and we said, what about we do an interactive segment where the main salon person comes on with 3 models, and we show different ways of cutting hair for the summer. We came back with a theme that was highly interactive, that gave them content that they didn't think about, and they went for it. So it's almost like, well, okay, you don't want me to come on and have an flat interview with this person. They should be an advertiser, but this person can come on and give some really cool content. Well, now we're taking it. And we just had to keep thinking out of the box.
How many times do you go back to somebody?
Usually, you know, the same person over a period of months you can go back to many times, but usually we try different people. If one person says no, there's many other people there you can pitch.
Sure.
And then if one person says no, go back in a couple weeks with another idea. Or even in a few days. I mean, sometimes we're on a timeline and we're like, sure, we got to get on KXAN, you know. It all comes down to how you approach them. You know, you don't want to beat down their door, but you want to think about, okay, this has got to be the winner.
Okay.
So just like anything, and they get so inundated with pitches
Sure.
that it's really important to think about what's going to make you stand out, because just general business news or general is not going to cut it. It's so overwhelming. These guys, first of all, if they answer your email, you're lucky, you know, so.
The 2 that answer the email were eventually asking for money to do it, but that's exactly after pitching a bunch of them, just had a few respond, and then they were passing some sales, so.
Yeah.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, yes.
To touch on contact information acquisition, I use a company called Hunter.io.
Okay.
And what it does is, for those who don't know about it, it scrapes the website for all the emails that are attached to that website.
Oh.
Yeah,
you're
well, it
kidding.
usually does. So if you go to like Seattle Times, right? I'm from Seattle, so Seattle Times.
I like that.
You can hit. It actually has a Google Chrome extension, so you just hit that and it pulls up a list of all the emails that are related to that website, and then it has
Wow.
a verification. Hunter.io, a verification dot, and sometimes it has the person's email address, what their role is, and occasionally a phone number.
Cool.
Hunter, that's cool. Is it expensive?
Hunter.io. So if the first 100 are free for the month, but then you can do multiple email addresses to do multiple hundreds to build out your list. We did it with the angel investors, and so now we have like a massive direct contact
That's
list.
awesome.
So
I
if
love
anybody
that.
wants that list,
Yes, please.
I'll
Holy
sell it to
smokes.
you. I'm just kidding.
Wow.
So it might help you too on Hunter.io.
Okay.
They had it for LinkedIn, right? Like,
They had, so then
and then they had to
Reportive,
close it or something?
well, they sold it. So Reportive was the same thing for Gmail, that there was an add-on, so when you put in someone's email address, it would verify it with their LinkedIn profile. And then you can make sure that it was a verified email plus all the information on that contact, and then that was sold.
No, but Hunter.io, like I used to use it. You know how LinkedIn, sometimes the emails aren't there and you're not their friend?
Yeah.
So I could just put in their name and it would find their email
That's
for
cool.
anyone on
It
LinkedIn.
was
But then
like
LinkedIn got really mad and then they like...
Interesting.
didn't do it anymore.
Hmm.
So,
Well, I wanted to also give, I think we'll probably have to wrap up. If there's any more questions, I'll be happy to stay out later and talk. I wanted to make sure you guys, if anybody needs my card, that you can grab it. Like I said, we're working with Mass Challenge, so we're part of the family and love being involved. And I'm getting ready to do, to host a podcast here in town for this magazine called Founding Austin. It's all about entrepreneurs and business owners, and we're launching a podcast this month, actually at the Mass Challenge Showcase, and it's going to be all about the startup community in Austin. It's called Up and Comers. So something for y'all to think about down the road if you ever want to pitch me on your company, because we are going to be doing a lot of stuff on startups. So yeah, so it was a pleasure talking to y'all today, and thank you so much.